Hi, session 11 again, section 2 this time. So we're going to go this time into a little bit more detail with regard to your particular profession. So let's have a look at healthcare clinic guidelines, cleanliness and hazards. So this will just relate to a type of clinic that you might be involved in. So these guidelines will ensure that your premises and practices are clean, safe and properly maintained. So any food and drink supplied to the clients or the staff on the premises must be supplied in accordance with local food or drink safety regulations. So you must ensure that the food that's being handed around your clinic at any particular time to clients or to staff actually is covered by those sort of regulations. So probably not a good idea to bring some home cooked food and hand it to one of your clients. All workways and passageways must be kept free from obstructions, and that's a fairly obvious one. Slip-free walking surfaces so that clients are less likely to fall in any type of weather, because sometimes rainy weather can make certain slopes hazardous. It needs to be slip-free. All chairs and work surfaces should be suitably positioned and set at an appropriate height. So we don't want chairs just sitting out in the middle of nowhere that somebody can trip over. Toilets and wash basins, etc., need to be kept clean and properly maintained. It's a big job. It needs to be done regularly on a regular basis. The workplace should be clean and tidy, so regular dusting, regular making sure that the water filters, water fountains are clean, that water fountain cups, that the cardboard cups are cleaned out regularly. There's not a lot of tissues lying around in waste paper baskets, etc., etc. And the levels of airborne allergens in the clinic should be kept to a minimum. So making sure that the clinic is regularly vacuumed to make sure there's not dust mites or allergens in the carpets, mould, etc., etc. That needs to be very routinely and precisely done. So bodywork and sharps. This is another thing that you might very well be involved in. Any needles are sharps, they're known as sharps, used should be new. They should be used, so in other words, you do not reuse needles. We used to, and we have to, at the end of every day, you'd get your needles and you'd put them into a steriliser, and you'd sterilise the needles, and you'd have to keep them covered then in metho or something like that for the next day's practice. We don't have to do all that because you can buy sharps these days that are actually within sharps containers and that they've already been pre-sterilised. So they should be new, they should be within their use by date, and any skin penetration that occurs as part of your practice should be done in accordance with accepted sterility guidelines and the various state and territory acts. So, for example, skin penetration regulation or the various local government interpretations of these regulations. I suggest that you work always with, you buy the little swabs, little alcohol swabs, and in my practice I work with swabs all the time. So all the time, particularly if you have a little bleed after you take a needle out, swab it, make sure that you have it completely swabbed, make sure that your hands are swabbed. That safeguards you and it safeguards your client. Massage and examination couches must be properly maintained. Surface tears can harbour pathogens and they should be cleaned off regularly. A good clean off with a disinfectant makes sure that there's nothing regularly. I mean regularly means that there's no pathogens that can exist. Examination or bodywork couches should be properly maintained, and you should ensure that infirm and elderly clients can climb up upon them and get off them again with safety and ease. So I always have a little step up sitting under my couch, I pull that out when I've got somebody who's actually either older, infirm, or overweight. Sometimes overweight people find it very hard to manipulate or to manage their bodies and move their bodies in and around. Something they have to step up onto. Before you purchase any equipment, ensure that it complies with the relevant Australian standards and that you understand any potential risks associated with its use. So massage tables that could collapse, oh horror, it'd be terrible. So you have to make sure that your massage table passes or complies with Australian standards, that it's safe to use, that it's not going to fall apart or collapse under somebody. Could be disastrous. Or not that it has sharp edges, because people will be getting up and down. Often people are in a state of half undress, and so their legs can be exposed. And if there's anything sharp on the edge of the couch, they could cut themselves. And older people have very thin skin, and something like that can bleed profusely and create another hazard. So all electrical equipment and power leads should be regularly checked and maintained and made sure that they're out of the way. People can't trip on them. Turn off power points at the end of the day so that you actually minimise the chance that something could burst into flames, or you can get electrical fire, etc., etc. Okay, so let's have a look at stress management, fire hazards. So first of all, stress. Monitor the workplace for things such as stress and RSI. And here we're looking ergonomically. So you should make sure that all your furniture and equipment that exists within your clinic is ergonomically suitable for long sitting or for the level of work that somebody's going to be working at. So a very important thing to actually make sure that you select wisely any furniture or aids that you use in your practice. Levels of stress need to be managed and maintained. So you don't want, we looked at this early on in this course, but looking at things like ensuring that staff get on with one another, or if there are any issues, that they're dealt with swiftly, harmoniously, and to everybody's satisfaction. You don't want glowering, resentful people who are actually working in the staff, because that causes stress. That has a knock-on effect to everybody who's working there, and it just makes your workplace a stressful place to work in. Ensure that staff have adequate rest and meal breaks. Somebody cannot work with low blood sugars. They'll work a lot less effectively and efficiently anyway. So it's in your interests to keep apart from looking after their health and well-being, it's in your interest as a business to make sure that your staff has plenty of breaks, that they get what they need to keep them happy so that they become more productive. Approved smoke alarms, very important. They should be fitted in the approved manner. So, and special less sensitive alarms are available for kitchen areas. You want that type of an alert. Fire can spread very quickly and with great with terrible, disastrous results. Ensure that all fire extinguishers are fitted, that they're workable, they need to work, and that staff are trained in their use. And keep a fire blanket in kitchen areas at all times, so that if a fire does break out and a person's in danger, you can cover them with a fire blanket. Okay, let's have a look at healthcare clinic guidelines, occupational health and safety. So the model workplace health and safety regulations require that a person conducting a business or an undertaking at a workplace to ensure the provision of and access to first aid equipment and facilities. So most important, the business owner must also ensure that an adequate number of workers are trained to administer first aid in the workplace, and that access to other trained first aiders is available to workers. Workers who are first aiders need to take reasonable care for their own safety and that of others in performing their normal work and their role as a first aider. So under the Model Workplace Health and Safety Act, there is no requirement that a first aider be paid for performing that role. So it's important to understand that first aid is something that's a requirement when you're working with people. And as a professional, you will be required as a part of your membership for your professional association to upgrade your first aid every year, your first aid certificate every year, and to make sure that you know the basics in first aid. Well, it's a good idea if you're running a business, then it's a good idea to have your employees do the same thing and get them to do a first aid course, an accredited first aid course. St John's Ambulance is one that does them there. They do a very good first aid course. I do mine through them. So very important, because well, you never know when, in my day, I'll tell something terrible. I'll tell you something terrible. I can remember a lecture at college, and this is a long, long time ago, as you can see. But I was told, if you have somebody who has a heart attack on your couch, get them out of your room very quickly. That's what a lecturer once told me. Terrible thing to say. To say to vulnerable and very dewy-eyed practitioners who are first learning how to, who weren't even in practice yet. But these days, thank goodness, none of those sorts of things can be said, let alone even do. So you never know. You do never know when somebody might have a stroke or an accident, which has got nothing to do with your business. It may be that they have a heart attack, and you have to be able to know first aid and to know what to do in that circumstance. Here's an activity. With your tutor, split into groups and look through the Endeavour Clinic Student Safety handout. Have a good look through it, and then compare what the Endeavour Clinic Student Safety handout lists with those in the PowerPoint, the PowerPoint screens that you've just looked at with regard to healthcare clinic guidelines, and to bodywork and sharps, etc., and cleanliness and hazards. So have a little look. You've looked at that in this PowerPoint. I'd like you to then compare that to the Endeavour Clinic Student Safety handout and see if there's any differences. Are there differences between the two? And through this procedure, work out what you might include in your own clinic policy, and then you can share it with the class. So, right, now we're going to have a look at infection control. A very important issue for all practitioners working with the human body, in particular body workers, because body workers are in physical contact at all times with a client, and therefore they have a high risk of exposure to pathogens. The other side of that is that inadvertently a body worker might transmit a pathogen on from one client to another client, and this is absolutely needs to be safeguarded against. So, and to do that, we observe basic infection control procedures. So here's another activity. At this stage of your degree program, you will have completed some of your bioscience subjects, and so it's important for you. You will have understand what pathogens you might have to be aware of when you're developing an effective infection control policy and procedures. So just have a little think about that. Give it a little bit of time to think about. Think about what could you do and how would you put that into place. I told you, I just spoke to you a moment ago about one of the things that I use all the time. I make sure that I use swabs at all times. I've got them in and out. I'm working with needles, but I'm in and out with swabs all the time. I keep them on me. I'm always opening swabs, and because they help to safeguard not only me, they keep my fingers clean. If I pick up something from a client, I could just swab them, clean my hands afterwards, between each patient with a good cleaner, and dry them off, make sure they're dry. But you'll have a look. You know, you understand what some of the things are involved. Okay, we're going to look at some infection control measures. Hands should be washed and properly dried between clients. It's an interesting thing, but you will know already, but pathogens can be, you might wash your hands, but pathogen can still be transmitted if the hands aren't dried properly. If you see an area on a client's body that appears to be harbouring potential pathogens, then it's important for your own safety, you then put on gloves and work with gloves as much as is possible. Clients with respiratory infections should be asked to wear face masks to reduce the spread of the infectious agent by droplets carried on the client's breath or when the client sneezes or coughs. It's not out of the ordinary. It's an expected and an understood thing to do, and most clients will understand basic infection control measures and will comply with you. The masks are they provide some sort of infection. They need to be fitted properly, and they need to be continually changed. And of course, a major rule of thumb: do not continue practicing if you have a viral or bacterial infection yourself. It's asking for trouble. Okay, here are some further basic infection control precautionary measures. Avoid handling tissues used by those with infections. If you were to pass a tissue across, make sure you get your swabs out, or you go and wash your hands and dry them completely. And also disinfect any surfaces that a person may have come in contact with. Waste bins should be covered with a disposable plastic liner sheet, and any breaks in your skin integrity should be covered with a waterproof dressing, both in terms of transmitting but also in receiving. If there's a break in your skin, that's exactly where pathogens can enter. And avoid any direct or unguarded contact with wounds that the client may have. Here's another activity for you. As a class, your lecturer will take you to the source. Your tutor will take you to the source and find the college notifiable diseases and control policy. You need to go through the policy and identify the following. What are the Australian standards that dictate these guidelines? What must students comply with in relation to these guidelines? What form must a student fill out to comply with the law on notifiable diseases? And what areas of these guidelines would you consider are important for your own clinic practice? So get your tutor to do that with you, and that will give you information that is that's very important to have as you go into your own clinic. Okay, we'll finish now with this section and we'll go on to